Can you work in Australia if your visa has condition 8101? This condition means that visa holders must not engage in work in Australia. Work means an activity which normally attracts pay in Australia. You are allowed to carry out activities such as volunteering, domestic family support, and online work, provided that you are not paid for the activity by an Australian employer. The department's policy guidelines say that online work while visiting Australia for short stays would generally not be considered a breach of Condition 8101 unless the visa holder is being paid by an Australian organisation. This would include online work by social media influencers and bloggers. This allows for digital nomads who use technology to work remotely and earn income to work in Australia, as long as you are either self-employed or employed by a company without an office in Australia. For domestic family support, the 600 visa may be appropriate for applicants intending a short visit to Australia to provide domestic support to family members. The department may take a flexible approach where applicants are intending to provide domestic support to family in Australia. The domestic support provided needs to be unpaid, less than 12 months, and not take away employment opportunities away from an Australian worker. Child minding or carer activities on a non-ongoing basis for a family member, for example, assisting a daughter to prepare for and after the birth of a child, are not considered to be in breach of Condition 8101. For long-term childcare or medical care, the visa holder and family must consider more appropriate and permanent arrangements. A 600 visa is generally not acceptable for applicants intending to care for international students on an ongoing basis, as a student guardian visa may be appropriate for this situation. Domestic workers or assistants may be eligible for a 600 visa if they are required to accompany their employer to Australia for a short visit of 3 months or less. This recognises that it may be unreasonable or impractical to expect an employer based outside of Australia to replace an important member of their travelling group, such as an existing nanny, for the purpose of providing care and support while the family is in Australia for a short holiday. These applications are considered to be lower risk due to the evidence of ongoing employment outside of Australia. It is not acceptable for a 600 visa applicant to travel to Australia for the purpose of providing domestic work or services for an Australian-based family, or for a longer stay period, including on a volunteer basis, as this would have adverse impact on employment opportunities for Australian citizens or permanent residents. In terms of volunteer work, genuine volunteer work is not considered to be a breach of Condition 8101, as this does not fall within the definition of work. Hence, the volunteer work must be unpaid and is short-term, which is less than 3 months. It is expected that volunteer roles would usually be in non-for-profit organisations rather than in commercial organisations. Volunteer work must not be in a role that would normally attract remuneration for Australian citizens or permanent residents, and must not raise concerns of worker exploitation. For example, a visa holder who intends to enter Australia to volunteer as a cleaner for an organisation or event would be in breach of Condition 8101, as this is a position which would normally attract remuneration for an Australian citizen or permanent resident. This is the case even if the work is for a non-for-profit organisation. Volunteer activities for spiritual purposes can be accommodated as a short-term non-work purpose of the program.